There's nothing I like more than reading a good book beside a fire on a rainy afternoon. Hi guys, welcome to the second activity of the university's tasks. In this short little video, Mr. Van Herk will be outlining the process of applying to university in the United States and in the United Kingdom. At the end of the activity, please complete task 2, which is a blog reflection on the whole idea of applying to universities. And you can consider maybe some questions like if there's anything else you still want to know after these videos, anything else you learned in these videos, but please see the task outline below this video for more information. Thanks very much, guys. Appreciate it.
Hi guys, Mr. Van Herk again. Welcome to part 2 of the university slideshow. Today we're going to talk about applying to the US and the UK. Starting with the UK, and most of what we talk about in this slide applies to other international schools. So for our guys it's mostly England, Scotland, maybe Wales, Ireland, Northern Ireland, but we've had students apply to schools in Europe and Australia as well. So first thing, knowing that applying to Australia, England, or New Zealand means you're applying for a 3-year undergraduate degree, not the 4-year degree that you would be pursuing here in Canada or the US. The next bullet point highlights why that is, because in those countries you're studying with a very narrow focus on one subject. So perhaps you're applying to medieval history. That's all you're going to be studying or reading, as they say in the UK, for 3 years. You're not going to be taking electives outside of your course of study. All of your courses will be related to the specific area that you've applied to. In Scotland, it's a little more generous in terms of the restrictions. It's typically a 4-year undergraduate degree like it is here in Canada or the US. You apply to a specific subject, but in each of your first 2 years you take 3 modules. That's what they call subjects. One of those modules will be the subject you apply to, for example, international relations. But the other two could be anything offered at the university that you have the qualifications for. For example, you might study economics and business as your other 2 modules for the first 2 years, but then in 3rd and 4th year you have to have chosen a major and stick with that subject for your last 2 years. Applying to the UK is really straightforward. It's a common application through UCAS. You can see the link at the bottom of the page. You have 5 choices on the application, but they're all for the same program. So you can't apply to history at one school and English at another and philosophy at another, because you write one statement that goes to all the schools you apply to. Again, as you mentioned, in England it's a 3-year undergrad, although some places, depending on the subject you're studying, for example engineering, it's probably a 4-year degree, and it's actually probably called a master's degree, even though it's your undergraduate degree. And if you remember from the Canadian slideshow, typically your undergraduate was a bachelor's, and then you went on to pursue a master's and possibly a PhD afterwards. Especially with the ancient universities in the UK, some of the undergraduate degrees, some of the arts degrees in Scotland, for example, are called master's degrees, even though they are undergraduate degrees. And you can get direct entry into professional programs. You may have heard me speak at some of the assemblies about students getting acceptance to med school or law school or dentistry or veterinary medicine. These are all incredibly competitive, especially the medical professions, but you can go straight from high school, right out of grade 12, into med school, and in 5 or 6 years graduate as a doctor instead of doing an undergraduate and possibly a master's degree before applying to med school. Admission to the UK programs, again, is pretty straightforward. They're looking for the curriculum. In other words, did you take courses related to what you want to study? Your marks specifically in those subjects, although, for example, the London School of Economics recruiter a couple weeks ago mentioned that for their school, which is arguably the most competitive in the UK, they want you to do really well across all subjects. And typically for a competitive program in the UK, you're looking for at least mid-80s in grade 11, projected at least that high in grade 12. Some of the more competitive schools and programs would be 90s. For example, the med school programs would be at least 90s across the board. And some programs, specifically the medical ones and law, in some cases you might have to write a test as well, an entry exam the BMAT, the LNAT. These are all standardized tests, kind of like the PSAT, but specifically for the program you're applying to. And again, I mentioned before, in each case you submit a one-page personal statement outlining why you are passionately committed to the subject you want to apply for, what you've done in your short life to demonstrate that passion, and you also have to pick one teacher who will act as your referee, and they also submit what's called a referee statement, again outlining why they feel that you'd be a strong candidate for that program. In the US, it's a lot more complicated. There's essentially 5 parts to the application. The first part they're going to look at, and argue the most important part, is your high school transcript. And that's not, grade 12 courses like we were talking about with Canada, but that's from grade 9 all the way through. And what they're looking for is the rigor of your transcript. Did you take challenging courses? So, college prep courses, although all the courses we offer here are considered university prep, so you certainly meet that criteria with the exception of some of the phys ed classes. Does your school offer AP courses? Yes, we offer 9 this year. Did you take any of them? And this would be grade 11, probably grade 12. Were you in any of the enriched classes? They ask for a ranking, although that's something that we steer away from, as do most independent schools, given that virtually everybody in your graduating class is going to go to university and you don't all take the same courses. It's not really fair to rank you against other students, but they want to know that you are at or near the top of your class, again, especially for the more selective American schools. Most schools ask for a second language, that'd be French or Spanish, German, Mandarin, whatever, for a minimum of 2 or 3 years, but again, with a small school like ours and restrictions on timetabling, that's not always possible, especially if you're carrying a really heavy course load in the sciences and maths. Again, what they're really looking for overall is a breadth of subjects, so what they call the 4 sols, English, math, science, and social science, through all 4 years. Even if you wanted to study history at university in the US, they want to see that you've taken math and science right through to grade 12, and they mean a lab science, so that's biology, chemistry, and physics, because American students take a much broader high school curriculum, but also at the undergraduate level, you're pursuing what's called the liberal arts, or really liberal arts and sciences curriculum, which means you're going to have to take some maths and sciences and some languages regardless of what you're studying. And as a math or science student, you're going to have to take humanities and social sciences as well. The second thing they're going to look at is your test scores, your standardized test scores. So that could be the SAT or the ACT. Last year, more students around the world wrote the ACT than the SAT, but I would encourage students who are really serious about the US to try both. You can submit whichever one you do better on. But there are a few hundred schools in the US, including some of the very strong liberal arts schools, that don't absolutely require SAT or ACT scores, especially not from international students. But if you look at, again, the more selective schools, for those students who do submit their test scores, they're as competitive as they are with the rest of the highly selective schools. And again, if you are in that boat, those guys looking what we call our U.S. hopefuls, you'd be writing the SAT probably in the spring of grade 11, so that'd be January and or May or June. So that's the sort of the academic component. The rest of the application is partly down to you, and the rest is down to us. So in the student summary, they're looking for commitment outside of the classroom. So that could be, again, community service is a big one. Anything you've done outside of taking tough courses and getting good marks. You typically have to submit 1 or 2 essays, and those could be on very personal, self-reflective topics like talk about a person, factual or fictional, who has influenced you and how. Talk about an event where you found yourself challenged. What did you learn from that? And again, they're looking for something that, again, is personal, that reflects your personality, but also that's polished, that you actually taken the time to use proper grammar. You then have to get typically 1 or 2, in the U.S. most cases, 2 U.S. teacher references, and these are teachers who have taught you, who know you well, talking specifically about you as a student in their classroom and your prospects for being a strong student at college. And then the last part is my part, the counselor's report, where I talk about your overall achievement compared to typical students at St. George's, and submit something called a school profile, which is a detailed summary of what courses we offer here, where our students go, what leadership opportunities there are, what extracurricular opportunities there are, so that they can compare your achievements and accomplishments up against what you were offered here. If you're interested in what specific programs are available, there's all kinds of great resources. If you want to just start with two simple ones, ucas.com is your one-stop shopping site for the UK. There's information on programs available, lots of help about how to apply, and that's actually the site you would use when it comes time to apply. And then the College Board is the site that hosts the PSAT, the SAT, but they have great college search engines as well. I'd also point you again or back to the RSGC Haiku University Affairs page, where there's lots of information, again including the University Prep Handbook, where you can find a lot more about US and UK options. Quick timeline, this is for grade 12. So in October, if you're applying to medicine, veterinary medicine, or dentistry, and or Oxbridge, which is just a clever way of combining Oxford or Cambridge, and you can only apply to one or the other, you can't apply to both. Those are due October 15th. If you're applying to the US, what's called early decision or early action, the former being a binding commitment. If you're accepted, you have to go. Early action just means they give you an answer sooner. Those are due November 1st. All other UK applications and US applications we would actually suggest that you have done by December 1st, but most of the US deadlines are actually January 1st, although that falls during the Christmas break and we won't be around to help you with those. So we would actually suggest that you have everything done a month before whatever the deadline is for the programs or the schools you're applying to. Again, a few more hints for those of you looking at the US. Do your research. Start now. There are so many options out there. Come to all the university fairs, come to the information sessions, hear what the American schools are looking for. There's 2,500 undergraduate universities in the US. There's so much information out there. You need to be an informed consumer when the time comes. Obviously we make you write the PSAT in grade 10, but if you're looking at the US, you have to write again in grade 11, and that'll give you a good indication of how you might do when you write the SAT. I suggest you might be doing this as part of the careers course, but compile a resume so when the time comes in grade 12 to apply, you don't forget the things that you did or the awards you achieved earlier on in your high school career. I would suggest that it's never too early to commit to your particular interests or passions. If there's certain things that you really enjoy or feel really strong about or are very good or potentially very good at, that will differentiate you from all the other competitive applicants. They would like to see, the admissions officers, particularly in the US, would like to see you've committed to something over a long period of time. Again, this would apply for Canada, US, UK, and the rest of the planet as well. If you can, get out and visit universities. If you can't, come to the information sessions when they're here in town. And again, this is just general information, general advice, regardless of where you're ultimately hoping to go. Take the hardest courses you can handle. Notice the emphasis on the last three words. Just because we offer particularly challenging courses, if you can't be successful in those courses and across the board, then don't overreach. But again, challenge yourself. And that's it in a nutshell, US and UK applications. Happy to provide more specific details at a later date, but I think that's all you need to know for now.